Feeling ignored and left in the dark. A new report says deaf people in Wales, like Caitlin, are still struggling to access basic healthcare. Contract signed for a new nuclear power station on Anglesey on the promise of 3,000 jobs. The future of Welsh rugby hangs in the balance as another crisis meeting takes place tonight. And the remarkable true story of how two very different communities forged an unlikely friendship is brought to life on stage. Hello, good evening. People in Wales who are deaf or have hearing loss are being ignored when it comes to doing basic things like booking a GP appointment or applying for a job. That's according to the RNID, which is calling on the next Welsh Government to ensure deaf people have proper access to healthcare. One woman from Swansea says she's experienced negative attitudes both as a deaf person and as a nurse who was on the front line during the COVID-19 pandemic. Dean Thomas Welch went to meet her.
Caitlin is putting her knowledge into action. The PhD student from Swansea is exploring the experiences of deaf nurses in the UK after qualifying and working as an intensive care nurse herself. It was her negative experiences as a patient that spurred her to want to make a difference.
I felt incredibly vulnerable and isolated because a lot of the doctors would not talk to me directly, they would talk to my relative. So I felt excluded from my own care, excluded from my own decision making, and any information I had, what I needed, was not given.
Now a leading charity is calling on the next Welsh Government to implement urgent action to remove the barriers faced by people in Wales who are deaf or have hearing loss. RNID, which supports around 850,000 people in Wales living with deafness, has published its manifesto, Loud and Clear Cymru, outlining measures it says will improve access to healthcare, employment and public services.
For example, in healthcare, we know that a huge amount of people are still experiencing poor communication, and that is their right that's being denied. So we want to see much better training for NHS staff in deaf awareness. For things like work, in work support, we want employment support to be much more accessible and tailored to the needs of deaf people and people with hearing loss. Deaf people are less likely to be in employment than the wider population.
Welsh Labour say they supported the recent British Sign Language Bill in the Senedd, which is designed to promote and facilitate the use of BSL. Reform UK Wales say they will implement a comprehensive review across the NHS in Wales to quantify the gaps in the workforce, including in audiology services, and set realistic trajectories for filling them. Plaid Cymru say they would recruit more GPs to expand access to services for deaf people and people with hearing loss. The Welsh Conservatives say they support greater investment in frontline services, including audiology, and believe that all public services should meet consistent standards of accessibility and communication. The Welsh Liberal Democrats say Wales needs proper funding for audiology services, consistent access to interpreters and clear accountability so patients aren't forced to navigate barriers just to access basic care. The Wales Green Party say they will deliver a long-term disabled people's rights plan, supported by transparent reporting and strong partnerships with disabled people's organisations.
Over 50% of the population over the age of 55 will have some form of hearing loss or deafness. But because of this large population scale, improvements benefit everyone. So if you just think in 20, 30 years, you might have some form of deafness or hearing loss. So wouldn't you like to see a more accessible society that will benefit you later down the line?
Caitlin hopes her research will help shape the improvements needed to ensure people with deafness and hearing loss have fair access to basic services. Dean Thomas Welch, ITV News.
Work is starting on a new nuclear power station at Wilfa on Anglesey. It comes as the UK government signed a contract with Rolls-Royce to build 3 small modular reactors, or SMRs, which developers say will create several thousand jobs. Well, Joanne Gallagher is live for us on Anglesey tonight. Joanne, now we're being told this is a big boost for the island and beyond.
Absolutely. Today is very much about this contract being signed, a step towards getting Wilver back up and running after so many years. These small reactors will be built off-site and then they will be brought to Anglesey where they will be assembled here. Now, in the main, this news today has been widely welcomed, although there are some people on the island who are against this project. 3,000 jobs are expected to be created here on the island, which has been very much welcomed. I've spoken to people many times on this island who are really worried about future-proofing jobs for those generations in the future. They talk about them having to move away from the island, and they very much hope that today's announcement means that they will stay here, which will be good for the island's economy. So 3,000 jobs here on Anglesey, 5,000 across the UK, so 8,000 in total. Now, these small reactors will create about enough electricity for 3 million homes over a period of 60 years. And Tom Gretrix, who's from the Nuclear Industry Association, has welcomed today's news.
There are jobs already that have been recruited, and there'll be more over the next few months as work starts on the site. Preparation work is important. You know, there's all the planning work to do before you start construction, and that requires people. And Rolls-Royce SMR have employed 1,800 people, not all on this project, but on this technology. And we'll see lots of local jobs developing and emerging over the next period. And we'll start to see real activity on the site from later this year over the next few years.
As I say, some concern from some locals who just don't want nuclear on the island. But in the main, this has been very much welcomed by those who live here, who work here and who want to stay on Ynys Môn, Anglesey.
Joanne Gallagher on the glorious Menai Strait. Thank you very much indeed. Now, in the run-up to next month's Senedd elections, we'll be interviewing the leaders of all the larger parties and asking the big questions that matter to you. Up first is the leader of the Green Party, Anthony Slaughter, and I'm delighted to say he's here now. Good to see you. One of your main pledges is around the scrapping of council tax. How much would you need to raise to cover its scrapping?
Well, council tax is inherently unfair tax. You know, people are paying over the odds on valuations that are outdated. So quite often it's those with the least paying the most. So we've scrapped council tax and replaced it with a land value tax. So tax the value of land, which means most people will be better off, especially in the cost of living crisis, but those with more wealth will be expected to pay a little bit more.
Farmers, landowners, they'll be paying more.
We're looking at farmers because farmers is a unique category. We don't want to, there's a lot of stuff in our manifesto about how we'll support farmers and work with farmers. So this is a work in progress, but we don't want to include farmland in that value.
So you're not there yet, you're thinking about this?
Well, this is something that have to be phased in. There are things in the manifesto that could be started from day one. We could start work on them. And there are other things like this where we have to get it right. So don't any unintended consequences. So you need to work with the civil service. You know, we haven't got access to them yet. And things like the budgeting for these sort of things, you know, you can pluck numbers out of thin air for manifestos. That just destroys faith in politics. So it's a case of sitting down with the civil service and the stakeholders and working out how to do it. But it has to be fair because the council taxes. I've had a former Welsh Government minister admit in a debate that council tax is broken and it's beyond repair. So this is a way of making it much fairer.
Well, talking about other things that people say are broken, health, you say you'll increase funding for dentists and GPs. How much exactly?
Well, we want to move again. This is a manifesto. It isn't a budget. We have ideas of where money can come from. We will shift some money around within the health service because what you do by moving resources onto primary care and bringing dentists and doctors into people's communities, you actually stop a backlog further down. You stop more expensive things having to be done. So you have to look at it in the round. I mean,
prevention better than cure.
Yeah, prevention. There's a large element of preventativeness and interventions in our manifesto as well. Healthier lifestyles. We're going to make people's homes warmer, clean, drier. All those things take pressure off the health service. And then there's the scandal of corridor care, which has to come to an end. It's bad for patient dignity, patient safety. It's bad for staff morale.
I'm interested in that because nobody wants corridor care. If you're a clinician, it's the last thing you want. So what are you going to do to fix it? I mean, it's a great aspiration, but how are you going to fix it?
Well, the first thing is to make a never event. They're not actually recorded at the moment. If you're not recording the data, you've got no real idea of how big the problem is and how to fix it. So we would want it to be declared a never event, which would mean the data would start being there and it would be unacceptable. So you'd have to start looking at, I mean, the NHS severely needs more resources as well, and we need to look at things like There's almost two elements to this manifesto, because Wales doesn't get fairer funding. There's lots of, we don't get fairer funding for HS2, Barnet Formula is not fair, Crown Estate's not devolved. But we've also, this is an election for the next 4 years, so we've got to work within the budget that the Welsh Government has. But it is a case of using those resources in different ways to prevent people spending longer in hospital when they don't need to.
You say you ultimately support free higher education and want 40% of youngsters to head to university. How on earth is that achievable?
That is an aspiration. That's not going to happen in a 4-year term. But it goes back to people like my generation who did get a free education. It should be free, but in the meantime, we need to tackle the obscene levels of debt that students are incurring, particularly with the Plan 2, where people are paying, they leave university, they're working, at the end of that year, they owe more than they did at the beginning of that year. So we'd start looking at schemes to relieve that, again, working within existing budgets.
There's lots of worthy and nice ideas here that I think everybody would say, look, yeah, why wouldn't we want any of this? But the Institute for Fiscal Studies says your manifesto is clearly not a complete costed plan for government. Would you accept that?
Well, as I said, a manifesto is a list of priorities and directions. We've costed things that we can think can be done quickly and easily. The IFS have said no one's manifesto adds up. I mean, it's also a specific way of looking at things, this sort of short-term spreadsheetism where you're just looking at this will cost this much this year, you're not looking at how much that will bring back in future years.
Now, I want to have a doorstep deal from you. Let's imagine you've just knocked on my door. Anthony Slaughter convinced me to vote Green. You've got a minute.
Good evening. This is an election taking part in very, very stressful times for people. The cost of living crisis is real and immense. People are hurting. They're struggling to pay their bills. They're struggling to heat their homes. Greens in the Senate will push for rent freezes to give people a bit of breathing space, ultimately introducing rent caps. We will cut your bills, retrofitting homes, making it cheaper to heat your homes. We will clean up our rivers. We will tackle the course of that, of the disgraceful state of our rivers and coastlines. Greens will be the bold politics that Wales has been waiting for so long. After 27 years of managed decline, we will be pushing for bold action to make people's lives better and to make the environment better. And
will you deliver on your promises?
Absolutely.
I'm sure everybody's going to say that. Anthony Slaughter, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there's plenty more to come this evening. Ruth, how's the weather looking?
Hello there. Well, sunshine and showers sums it up with maybe some hail and thunder in the mix too. I'll see you soon.
And we have the true story of unity between two unlikely groups that's being brought to life on stage. Now, you'll probably be familiar with the Full Monty. Well, a Pembrokeshire theatre company will soon launch a fresh take on the famous film at Milford Haven's Torch Theatre. Cast and crew say their show will shine a light on the importance of male friendship, vulnerability and support in a bid to get more men to open up about their mental health. Lewis Rhys-Jones went along to watch rehearsals.
Getting ready to put on a very important show. Milford Haven's Torch Theatre will soon be hosting a fresh take on the Full Monty. But it won't just be the clothes coming off. The cast and crew hope their performance will brush off the stigma around men's mental health.
We're not playing it for laughs. The laughs are in the script. I hope the story of these men coming together, facing adversity and realising that there's light at the end of the tunnel will take something from that. I also think for young male actors, it's often seen as you need to be in sports, you need to like games, but actually young men in theatre, it can be a really good outlet for them. And I think theatre in general helps you empathise and understand what it's like to be living in somebody else's shoes.
Peter lost a friend to suicide a few years ago and has faced his own mental health battles throughout life, which is why he was eager to lead the cast in this latest production.
There are genuine people out there that are struggling daily to put a smile on their face and to function. And I think we need a bit more empathy and understanding about those true cases and people who are genuinely struggling to just function. And myself, I know that I did, and I can really say theatre literally saved my life.
So you can't give up now.
The Zen Theatre Company in Pembrokeshire are collaborating with the men's charity Give the Boys a Lift, in hope the performance can amplify conversations around well-being.
Go to the blinking pub!
If there are scenes in this show that people don't have a little tear in their eye, then I'll be disappointed, because there's some really beautiful moments. But it's opening those conversations. I mean, this is set in the late 1980s, early 90s. There was not the opportunities for men back then that there is now to be able to go and seek these support services that there are these days. And locally, Pembrokeshire specifically, we've got so many great charities that support men and women and anybody who needs that extra support.
Audiences will be able to enjoy this latest version of the Full Monty in June, which will shine a light on men's mental health and the importance of talking. Lewis Rhys-Jones, ITV News, Milford Haven.
Member clubs of the Welsh Rugby Union are gathering tonight at the Principality Stadium for an extraordinary meeting to discuss the future of the professional game. The lead item on the agenda had been a vote of no confidence in Chair Richard Collier-Keywood, but it is now looking doubtful that vote will go ahead. Well, joining us now to help make sense of all this is our sports reporter Matt Southcombe. Matt, what is going on?
Well, John, as you mentioned, the headline motions at this EGM was one, a vote of no confidence in Chair Richard Collier-Keywood, and there was also a vote of no confidence in somebody called Malcolm Wall, who is the chair of the Professional Rugby Board. Now, since the EGM was called, both of those individuals have announced that they'll be leaving the Welsh Rugby Union anyway. Malcolm Wall has already left the organisation since the end of his term, and he's already been replaced. And Richard Collier-Keywood's term will come to an end in July. Now, since they made their announcements, the clubs that called and triggered this EGM then removed their support for their own motions. Now, at that point, nobody really knew what was going to happen. The Welsh Rugby Union will have sought legal counsel on this, and they have discovered that due to company law and their own articles of association, that the meeting must go ahead regardless of whether or not the people who actually called it even want it anymore. So the first thing that will happen in this stadium tonight is the WRU will see if there is any opposition to those motions being struck from the agenda. Some clubs will say no, this has to go ahead. In that instance, there will there and then be a vote of no confidence in Richard Collier-Keywood. But if there is no opposition to these motions being struck off the agenda, then what will essentially happen is the union will make a presentation to the clubs on the state of the professional game, and it will be an open Q&A. So right now, we don't even know if that vote of no confidence in Richard Collier-Keywood is going ahead. But by the time our late team are on the air this evening, we'll have all the answers one way or the other.
Well, that's good because it's me. Matt, thanks very much indeed. Matt Southcombe there making sense of things. A quick look now at what's still ahead tonight.
Coming up in the programme, the Southport Public Inquiry finds the killer was an extreme danger and his attack on a children's dance class could and should have been prevented. America's blockade begins at the Strait of Hormuz after peace talks between the US and Iran ended without a deal. And Northern Ireland's Rory McIlroy makes history in Augusta as he retains his Masters title. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
And a reminder now of how you can get more analysis on all the big stories in Wales in your weekly newsletter. Just scan the QR code on your screen now, where you can sign up on Substack. You only have to do it once, and after that, we'll automatically email you our weekly newsletter, where you can get more analysis and insight from our reporters on the biggest stories around Wales. It's completely free to sign up, and you can read it on your phone and tablet too. Just scan the QR code to sign up, or if you're already on Substack, just search ITV Wales. Couldn't be easier. Now, a major new musical based on a hit British film is premiering in Cardiff. Pride tells the story of how one Welsh mining community found support and friendship from gay and lesbian campaigners from London during the miners' strike. The new show is previewing at Cardiff's Sherman Theatre before transferring to the National Theatre in London in the summer. Mike Griffiths has been to meet the people who inspired the remarkable story.
Dave Donovan from the Delice Valley.
Warm friendships forged during a time of great division.
This is for the miners.
When the film Pride was released in 2014, its true story of two communities finding common ground during the miners' strike won international acclaim. 40 years since the end of the strike, it's now being retold as a stage musical.
At the time, I was representing the Neath, Swansea and Dulwich Valley Miner Support Group, and as such I ended up going to London to meet groups that wanted to support us, and one of those groups was LGSM, Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners. To find those two disparate groups come together, well, it was remarkable, but maybe not so surprising if you come from either of those groups under attack. Very few people get the opportunity, if you like, or the good fortune to have a part of your life, a part of your story shown in film or on stage. You must feel very, very grateful and quite humbled by it.
It's also a story of how barriers were overcome and lives changed forever.
We had to raise money very quickly. Our support group got very organised, so the women got involved with that very, very quickly. And very, very quickly in our support group, we developed this way of saying to anybody who donated money, was a major donator, come and see where your money is being spent. It's not a documentary about the strike. It's about a very special relationship, about two very different communities that came together in that period of adversity.
The show promises an all-new cast. With previews still ongoing, the performance itself is being kept closely under wraps.
When we opened the film at the Cannes Film Festival, it got this record-breaking standing ovation from an international audience. So it was clear that the emotional impact was capable of reaching lots and lots of people. There'll be people who know the film coming to the musical, but mostly I think our audience will be people who haven't seen the film. And that would be great if that was the case.
Some of the real people were here on the opening of the first preview, and I've never felt like that on stage before. It was such a special moment to be able to retell their story, because we're all so passionate about it. We care so much about the story.
Whether on stage or off, everyone involved hopes the production will continue to share a distinctly Welsh story with new audiences. Mike Griffiths, ITV News.
Sunshine to start the week?
Ish, I think is probably the best way of saying it. Some parts of Wales had a little bit of sunshine out there today, didn't they? But do you know what? It's that time of the year, John. We get hail, we get thunder, we get lightning, we get cold temps, we get warm temps. Things are just starting to warm up. Oh, and then of course, to throw into the mix, we also get moderate levels of UV and high levels of tree pollen. It is fun for everyone at this time of the year, isn't it? So coming back then to the rest of this week, what on earth is going on? Well, it's unsettled with a mixture of sunshine and showers. As we were just saying, there will also be hail and thunder for you at times, although fingers crossed, temperatures should start to feel just a little bit warmer by the time we get to the end of the week. And it's all thanks to, well, business as usual, quite frankly. We've got an area of low pressure, several areas of low pressure, in fact, piling their way in from the Atlantic, which means, as I say, you can see these frontal systems. That effectively shows well the rain and the temperatures. Chilly, as I said, to start, but by the time we get to the end of the week, fingers crossed, we should find something just that little bit milder. So here's a look at all of that in a little more detail.
A clear start makes way for a day of ancient discoveries. Tool sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.
Still got a few showers across the north, but largely dry with some evening sunshine out there. Make the most of that, though, because the cloud will start to build once again down across the south, and we'll see some showers just starting to work into the far southwest by the early hours of the morning. Under clear skies, though, particularly across northeastern areas and more sheltered spots, it could well be cold enough for a little bit of grass frost. All very normal for this time of the year, if a little bit of a shock to the system, I know. So across the northeast, it is going to be a pretty decent start to Tuesday, but that cloud and wet weather will start its journey northwards and eastwards during the course of the morning. Now, some of these downpours could well be on the heavy side with some rumbles of thunder, maybe some hail thrown in too. In fact, I think the only thing I've missed off the list is sunshine. Not likely to see much of that out there tomorrow. Lots of low cloud, quite murky conditions as well, with a developing breeze as well. So highs of 13 or 14, but in that breeze, I think feeling just that little bit fresher with moderate levels of UV. So nothing too much to worry about there. But as we head through Tuesday evening into the overnight period, there is another band of very heavy showers that will work their way across us, followed by further showers by the early hours then of Wednesday morning. So it is going to be quite a wet night. No warnings, it's during the overnight period, so we're not expecting anything in terms of disruption. But you can see Wednesday then is set to be another unsettled day. Not bad for a time, but the heavy rain will work its way eastwards, clearing though from the southwest a little bit later into the afternoon. So there's a possibility we could end Wednesday on a brighter note with some spells of sunshine. And actually, I've been talking about a rise in temperatures. We could hit 15 or 16, but still got quite a keen breeze. And those temperatures will continue to feel a little bit milder by the time we get to the end of the week.
TUI sponsors ITV Cymru Wales weather.
See, all this weather is playing havoc with wardrobe choices. What on earth do you wear? Playing havoc with your microphone as well. We can actually hear you now, though, I think.
Well,
Shout!
The less for me, the better, I think. Thanks very much indeed. That's all for now. I'll be back, though, loud and clear, for the late updates at 10:30. But from all of us on the programme, thanks for watching.